The following is a presentation of the Six Arrows Radio Network.
Welcome to the Modern Christian Men Podcast with your host, Cale Nelson.
I love the opportunity to bring these men onto the show and share with you about where they are in life, what they're doing, their latest book, their most recent record, where they are, what is just happening, and how God is using them to complete His work for the kingdom. And sometimes it's real serious, and sometimes it's kind of overwhelming, but sometimes it can be a lot of fun. And that's what I've got for you today. Michael Johnson and his wife Julie in Franklin, Tennessee have created a ministry called Future Marriage University. Now, let me tell you, if you're already married and you've got like 12 kids and you've heard it all, you haven't, because you haven't heard Michael, one of the funniest guys I know, period. I'm a funny guy, but Michael is a really, really funny guy. And I want you to enjoy this show with me as much as Michael and I enjoyed putting it together. Michael, welcome into the program. It's quiet in your house. How did you do that this morning?
Threats.
Okay.
I mean, mild threats. It wasn't actually, not death threats.
Right. It's kind of, I'm going to take your phone away, or...
Yeah.
Julie, you're not going to be able to go to the grocery store this week or something.
That would be a threat to me. That would not be a threat. She'd be like, okay,
great. Thank you. Awesome. Well, I'm tickled to have you. Like I said last night, I would love to just talk about where you guys are in ministry, what you're doing, and why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, on past episodes, we've talked about porn, we've talked about race, we've talked about seeing visions of angels and demons in real life. All these, I mean, we've covered all sorts of topics. So we've talked about suicide, we've talked about PTSD and what we can do to help our returning vets. Yeah. But, I've got a feeling that we might have some younger guys listening that could benefit from something regarding talking about what happens before marriage, because we've talked a lot about marriage, but we haven't really talked a lot about what happens before.
Yeah. Well, Future Marriage University is all about treating marriage as if it might possibly be as important as career, might possibly be as challenging as career, and might possibly be as rewarding. And if you can accede to those three possibilities, then it seems like it makes sense to prepare for marriage like you do a career, which would be far more intentionally than our culture, or even the church, has us do right now, far more intelligently and farther in advance, which is why this past Wednesday I was at a church talking to middle school and high school students about purpose-driven dating. And because we're trying to get that early, so that really our big holy audacious goal. Oh, I slay me! I said that.
I like it.
But our big holy, and I didn't even make that up. I can't remember what cheesy blog I read that on. But our big goal is to change the mind of the culture about the biblical meaning, purpose, and significance of marriage. So that said, premarital counseling is awesome. That's great. That's not what we do. Couples counseling or that's great, but that's not what we do. We want to get to people before they're dating and help cast a vision for where they would actually want their dating life to head, and then kind of provide roadmaps and instructions on how to get there.
When I was a kid, I would sometimes lay in bed at night and see, I wonder who I'll marry. I wonder if it'll be, this little girlfriend I've got here in first grade or something. And
you started in first grade?
Yeah, I was.
Man, you were ahead of me. I thought I was early in third grade.
Yeah, first grade, man. But I guess we could talk about that. I grew up in public schools, so it was. So who's your girlfriend now? Every time you come home or you see somebody else, his little girlfriend's Jennifer or something, and it was kind of like a status thing among parents, which I've noticed now that I've got children who don't have girlfriends and boyfriends, but have nieces and nephews who are involved in this stuff. So it was always kind of like, I wonder who it's going to be, or, God, can you give me a little hint on who it's going to be, who she's going to be, and stuff like that. And I'm really glad he never did, because my wife was someone I didn't even know till about 5 years before we ever even got together to date. But we didn't do things, anything like FMU teaches us to do. But at the same time, this was back in the 90s, so we were dating, and we actually talked to each other on the telephone a lot.
Yeah.
And we saw each other in person a lot.
Yeah.
And we built a friendship and a relationship, and we're about, as of this recording, we're about 12 days away from 20 years of marriage, so that's exciting. But it took us a long time. It took us a long time to like each other after being married, probably because we didn't do it right to start with, and that's kind of one of the focuses you guys have. I mean, you're trying to teach kids, and I'm going to call them kids because you're in junior high school, so they're still kids. You're trying to teach them how to be prepared for this next level of living.
Yeah.
That's kind of a big task, man. What in the world possessed you and Julie to go down this road?
Well, that would be my mom. Christmas of junior year in college, my mom gave me a marriage book. I thought it was the lamest Christmas present I could have ever imagined getting. I wasn't dating anybody seriously at the time, and I got a marriage book. Whatever. But I read it at Christmas break, and what I realize in retrospect is that my mom gave me this amazing gift of reading a marriage book when I didn't have a relationship to defend, i.e., reading everything in the book in light of how can I make this support what I'm already doing.
Right.
And I didn't have love chemicals flooding my brain, inhibiting clear thinking. So as it turns out, Julie and I started dating within 30 days of me having finished that book. But when I read the book, clear head, clear mind, no agenda. And so we immediately began, because Julie and I had been friends for 2.5 years already. So we knew we weren't dating just so maybe we could like kiss or something. I mean, we were thinking maybe this is the thing. And so we immediately started applying those principles. And after 10 years of marriage, I sensed the Lord asking me to go back and reread that book and figure out how to trick other people into doing what my mom tricked me into doing. And we wound up initially with a living room full of single women in their 30s. Now, back in college, me and my roommates would try really hard to figure out how to fill our living room with single women, but after 10 years of marriage, I'm not looking to do a women's Bible study with my wife. But all of that to say, doing those classes, and we had a guys group next, and then we had a couple more ladies groups, another guys group, but we realized that we call it I'm having a brain aneurysm. I can't remember what we call it, but really kind of the single life crisis, if you will. And what it looks like is somewhere about 10 years after graduating from college, we're realizing that people were waking up, and either they were thinking over on this side of the continuum, which if you could see me, I got my left hand extended over to the left, and you're thinking, my life sucks. I can't believe I invested all this time and energy and effort in getting the degree and getting the job and getting the promotion, and this is all I have. I got to get married. Or they're over here on this far side of the continuum. Now my right hand is extended to the right, and they're like, my life rocks. I've accomplished a lot of my career goals. I think I'm ready to settle down, complete the package, and get married. Either way, wherever that single is, either extreme or anywhere in between, they have spent the last 10 years of their life almost entirely focused on their career, which in most instances, not all, but most, even with ministry people, is another way of saying almost entirely focused on themselves. What are my gifts? What are my skills? What are my dreams? What are my weaknesses? And so then, even if they get on eHarmony and find someone they're matched up with in 29 different areas of compatibility, to which I say, if you find that person, number one, congratulations, and number two, It's the 30th area that's going to kill you. But they have such high expectations, and it's been so long, and they have such a higher level of desperation and intensity. It's a train wreck. And so we started targeting college students. In fact, even today, my bullseye is an 18-year-old male. I want to get that 18-year-old guy's attention, and I want to tell him, you have big dreams, big ideas about your life. More than likely that involves marriage, and you need to start living like that. Like one day you're going to be a husband and a father, and yeah, maybe you'll have a neato career as a rock star. But, it's, in fact, I'm like, you got me monologuing now, but it reminds me when I went, this is way back when we first started targeting Christian colleges and universities. I was at Belmont and speaking to 100 or so college students in a class there. And I asked the students, I said, how many of you guys think you want a job in the music industry? And well over half of those students' hands shot in the air. So we talked about career and how we prepare for career and why we prepare for it that way and blah, blah, blah. And then I switched over to marriage and I said, how many of you guys think you want to be married? And maybe a handful, 2 handfuls of hands sort of raised a little higher than the ear, but not really shot up in the air. There was clearly a reticence to admit this interest in marriage, and I called them out on it. I said, guys, here's the reality. When I asked you about your career aspirations, you made no bones about it. You want to be in the music industry. And I'm here to tell you, because of course at the time I had a job in the music industry, I was like, not 10% of y'all will have a full-time career in the music industry. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just telling you the facts. And I'm also telling you, good for you that you have a vision, that you have a goal, and that you are going for it. Good for you. But if statistics hold, which, they may not, because less and less people are getting married. But at the time, statistics still showed at the time that 90% of you guys are going to get married. And I could get barely a handful of y'all to raise your hand and say, yeah, that's where I want to be. That's where I'm headed. That's my goal. I can say statistics say still 86% of singles say they want to be married. And yet, in spite of 60%, 86, in spite of 86% of singles saying they want to be married, the reality is you look at 25 to 34-year-olds, do you know what percentage of 25 to 34-year-olds are married today?
No, but it's got to be lower than I would anticipated 10 years ago.
30%.
So we're not only having a marriage crisis, we're going to have a population declination.
Implosion.
Yeah.
Well, and even as you say that, it's not like we stopped having kids because we stopped having marriage. Age at first marriage for females right now is 28, but age of first birth is 26. Uh-huh. Those are broken statistics.
Yeah, right? Let's see. Let's do this part first, and then we'll get married later.
Yes. So that's all. So you asked, and
sorry.
I monologued. No, you asked, how do you get into this? Started with my mom, and now it's ended with this crusade of, wow, we have got to save the culture because the culture is lost.
Yeah.
Well,
the funny part about this to me is I didn't realize that you and Julie were friends before you started dating. I knew that you were in school together. I knew that you had this really probably cool Tom Cruise, Kevin Bacon haircut that, you were just really big stud player on campus. And I'm just so shocked that she was actually your friend before you got. I thought it was just you kind of snookered her in, and I didn't know she because I knew that you had a reputation, much like myself, to be a game player out in the field.
I was a game player, even though I was no Tom Cruise.
Maybe Napoleon Dynamite would have been a better.
Yes, totally. Except I can't even dance as cool as he can, so I don't even have that going for me.
You do a pretty good Pedro, but we won't go there right now. So.
Yes, yeah. No, my sense of humor was my only card that I had to play. That was it. But Yeah, the funny thing about that is I didn't do that on purpose. I was not thinking, well, obviously, a happy married couple at their essence are just really great friends, so therefore it makes the most sense for me to find a girl that I can be great friends with and then see if I fall in love with her. But that's what happened. Yeah. Not the plan, but that is now the suggestion I'm making to students and young adults, is instead of that movie scene moment where you look across the room and she's looking over at you and you know she's looking just at you and you're looking, well, actually you're looking at several other girls, but she's one of them. No, forget about that. Forget about that. Find a girl that you like in student ministry, in your young adult class, whatever. Get to know her. Find out what makes her tick. Find out what you have compatible, what you don't. Find out whether she goes to church. I love that. Is she a believer? Well, she goes to church. What? That's not what I asked. I asked, is she like a follower of Jesus? Well, she goes to church on Easter and Christmas. Yeah. And so, and then see if maybe instead of falling in love, you do what Julie and I did and you grow in love. So, yeah, that is definitely a paradigm we would love to see embraced.
So how in the world do you set a 15, 17, 18-year-old down in a classroom setting or, school assembly or even, at a church somewhere and say, okay, guys, I know that you're thinking about the sports career. You're three game athlete, whatever they call that. My kids aren't. Yeah. You're really good at band, and you really play the clarinet well, or you march the cymbals really great, and you're trying to get a scholarship. So, and you want to be a child psychologist or whatever when you grow up. But how do you talk to these kids? And because I remember the frame of mind I was in when I was 17, 18, 20. How do you talk to them and say, yeah, okay, so your parents are pushing you to go to college. Your youth pastor is trying to get you to grow up and be a youth pastor. But in the midst of all this, you've got a little girlfriend that she's great except 1 week out of the month, and then she drives you crazy. But how do you think about all this stuff and start putting this into kids, man? Because, whoa, I'm 45, 20 years married, got 5 kids, and I'm not really having these conversations. Well, I kind of do, but not necessarily like you're describing. So tell me, how do you get kids to the point where they'll listen to you talk about this and not just check out and be insta-facing or whatever they do?
Yeah, well, one thing a suggestion I make to parents in doing that with their own students, their own kids, is tell them about your stories. And I know, I feel like what mostly happens is the parents have this intense belief that they have to have the sex talk, and that's like it's all about sex and it's just a talk. Right. And really, what I encourage parents to do is have the relationship discussion, that happens as you live life over time. So instead of starting to talk about sex, just, your dating life. Again, that's not the window to every kid's heart, but I mean, most kids want to hear stories. They love hearing fun. One of the first stories I shared with this church group down in Spring Hill, Tennessee, Wellspring Christian Church, shout out to them, is the story where I tried to do this double date thing with this friend of mine that was interested in this other girl, and so I tried to get this other girl's friend to go out with me as a double date, and it blew up in my face, and I even tell it with a little PowerPoint diagram. I mean, we've got boxes and arrows, and and they love it. Right. And then they can see this guy can relate. I can listen to what he has to say because he can confess to being as stupid as I can't confess to being right now. Right. That's awesome. So I really feel like that's a huge thing, is being able to relate to them with just, okay, here's some of the mistakes I made. And again, we didn't talk about sex the first day. I mean, we're just talking about dating and relationship. And we get to that other stuff later, which later wound up being this past Wednesday. But so that's one suggestion. The other is humor. The other is, I mean, again, even though we're Future Marriage University, and we really can't take marriage out of FMU, or then FMU would just be a bad,
it'd be bad.
So we don't want to do that. But that said, the series is purpose-driven dating. Our other series is Relationology, where we share truths for thriving in relationships. What I'm trying to say is we don't put marriage right up there. Even when we're talking, and we learned this the hard way. Our first study guide was top 10 marriage tips for smart singles. That turned out to be the worst possible. No single person was going to carry around their workbook that said top 10 marriage tips for smart singles. Remember the story at Belmont? They can't even raise their hand and say that maybe they might want to be married sometime before they die. So they're not going to walk around with a study guide. Well, that same series is now called Beyond Sex and Salvation. It's the exact same content, but that we took out marriage, we took out singles. We're like, hey, at the church, pretty much all you know about marriage prior to premarital counseling is you're supposed to wait for marriage to have sex and you're supposed to marry a believer. Well, Beyond Sex and Salvation, here's the other things you might want to know.
Wow.
But again, that's the tips. You got to avoid the marriage thing. As soon as you say marriage, anybody who is not already in a very serious dating or engaged relationship where they're already seriously talking about marriage tunes out. Mm-hmm. They know for certain you're not talking to them. And yet that's all the people I want to reach. So I minimize the marriage thing. I minimize it, and I just, hey, let's talk about dating. Let's talk about relationships. You're interested in sex, are you? Well, okay.
Well, what kind of reaction do you get back from the students? I mean, you come in, let me just default, because we'll have this in the show notes, but MJ and Julie are two of the funniest, best mated people that I've never met in person. I mean, you guys work so good together. I mean, there's no doubt that you're doing what you are called to do. But
thank you for saying that.
I mean, it's the truth, dude. I watch your videos. I never watch YouTube. I'm like the biggest anti-YouTube guy ever, just because I like listening to things. But I love watching your videos because most of the time she looks like she wants to punch you, but you can see at the same time she's like, I'm married, an idiot, and then she's like, I love this man.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. And you're just like all men. I got a wife, and it's awesome,
She's pretty.
Yeah.
Look at her. Yeah. No, it's interesting that you say that because before we started doing those Love Ed videos, and that is the name of our main little program they do on YouTube is Love Ed with Julie and MJ, and I knew God was calling us off the road. I knew He wanted us to focus online, and He wanted me to make videos. And because we'd never done the YouTube thing. And after a month or so, because, I immediately respond to God's call just like that. So 1 or 2 or 3 months later, we still haven't made a single video. And I look at Julie and I was like, you know what? I think God wants us to do these videos together. And her immediate reaction was, I think you're right. And that's how I knew it was the Holy Spirit, because my wife hates being up in front of people, which technically when you do YouTube, especially when you see the number of views on our videos, we're not really in front of people, but still she hates doing something in front of the camera, in front things that people are going to see. She'd much rather be in the background. And yet I told her, I think probably again, even before we'd done the first video yet, maybe we'd finally bought the camera. And I was like, I think the reason we're supposed to do these together is not because I can't already convey the same truth in our Date Night Advice blog, or that I couldn't convey these same truths in videos by myself. I think God wants us to do these videos together because the people that we're trying to see something that they want. I said that to a married friend of mine who's not in a great marriage relationship, and he started to tear up and he said, yeah, I wish my wife looked at me the way your wife looks at you.
Wow.
And I say that, well, it sounds like I'm bragging. Maybe I am. But I say that because the guy that said that to me I am not better than him.
Right.
I am not more suited for marriage than him. I wasn't really necessarily better prepared than him. There's not, me and him are fellow brothers in Christ. We have just as much stupid stuff, just as much challenges, just as much stubbornness, and yet I'm in this marriage relationship where I'm thriving, and he's in a marriage relationship where he's barely surviving. And that said, I know, because I know me, I know most people could enjoy what Julie and I enjoy. Julie's the same way, by the way. I know you probably think she's a saintist. Not a Satanist, a saintest. Is that a female saint, or is it just a saint?
Maybe just a saint.
An angel. Anyway.
Yes, with
but
extra
no,
wings.
she has all her own issues and stuff like that, and yet we truly do. It is not just an act on a show. We just enjoy a really great relationship, even though we go at it just like you do with your wife, even though I storm off sometimes, I lose my temper, whatever. But overall, we thrive. Mm-hmm. And because I know we can do it, I know almost anyone can do this. And the more advanced preparation, better chances.
And looking at the church, looking at the divorce rate in the church, well, early on you said it's not premarital counseling, it's not any of that stuff. Because for me, I came up in a family, I can't find divorce in my background. My wife came from a very divorce-ridden family. Mm-hmm. And we've got a story we'll share later, I'm sure, one of these days here about that. But all I knew about marriage was you did it once and you stayed there. Her view of marriage was, well, maybe, there's alternatives. We'll see what happens, kind of a deal. Mm-hmm. But there was we had maybe 3 meetings with our pastor. And
3.
Yeah.
Why would you need more?
Yeah, you're going to get married, and she's a believer, and we're going to have sex, like you said. So, But looking at the big picture, for years, I spent all those years in school preparing for tomorrow. I was involved. I had jobs throughout that time where I was learning to work and, be a part of something bigger and different than just my household. And, my dad had aspirations for me. My grandfathers had aspirations for me. I was,
no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure at all. But nothing was talking about marriage except my mom had one she picked out she liked, and my dad liked that one plus another one. But beyond that, and neither one, by the way, I married. Yeah, I married the one they didn't like. They don't listen. It doesn't matter. Anyway, but getting to that, all of this preparation, even as a child, a young man, no preparation on preparing myself for marriage. Yeah. And wow, listening to what you guys are doing, church is inviting you in, school's inviting you in. You guys are, this sounds funny, just knowing MJ. This sounds funny. You're cutting edge. Really, yes. with what you're bringing to people, is because it's almost like in church. Let's talk about pornography a second, right? So we don't talk about porn in church, but it's destroying our church. And it's kind of the same way. We have youth groups, and we're teaching our kids to strive after righteousness and live the best life they can, modeled after Jesus. Yeah. And, don't look at porn, don't do naked Instagram, whatever. But I think it's Snapchat. Anyway, so you don't do that without your clothes on. And we just don't tell them. We're not preparing. We're working so hard to keep them out of hell. We're really not preparing them for the heaven that my wife and I enjoy, and you and Julie enjoy. This relationship on earth that we have together is just marvelous. We're not preparing our kids for it. You guys are doing that. And it's, this is why I wanted you on the program for the last 3+ years, to share what you guys are doing, because it's groundbreaking, and I think we're kind of missing it in the big picture of the church.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and again, anybody, you brought up porn. That's an issue we address on right on our website. We have several hot topic options, and one of those is porn. Just so you know, anybody, if you are going to our website, all the links there are safe. There are no.
They're funny.
Some websites you go to, you're like, okay, if I click on here, whoa, that went somewhere totally different. No, so the porn tab is our material. And the bottom line is, anybody struggling with addiction, anybody that's actually experiencing freedom after having been in addiction knows it's not enough to say no to the bad. You've got to be pursuing, running after, chasing after, delighting in the good. Yes. And we tell these kids, don't have sex and don't look at porn, but get your career and everything set up so you can get married by the time you're 28 females and 30 males. And it's like, that is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
That is totally, I just don't think I would have made it to 30. I just don't believe I would have been able to do that. I'm not saying it's not possible. It is, of course it's possible, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think that's what God is asking us to do. I think God He set up the sex drive just the way He set it up, so that somewhere by the age of 15 at the latest, everybody's got a sex drive in full functioning form that they get to spend the next 5 to 10 years, 15 years max, trying to tame, but hopefully 5 to 10 years. And then, after they've learned in singleness how to maintain their own body in sanctification and honor, like 1 Thessalonians 4 does, then they get to continue to learn how to do that in monogamy. But, our whole culture is so career focused that it really, if I told you all the ways that our culture is career focused, just intricate little details of how it is thwarting success in marriage, you'd be like, I didn't think about that. I didn't think about that. I never thought it. I didn't, because there's so many ways that this career focus just blows up what God intended for His church to have in marriage.
And you're not encouraging kids to get married at 17 and 18. I mean,
no.
But I get what you're saying. I mean, it used to not be this way. And I hate being the 45-year-old guy in the room that remembers how everything used to be. Because it was way different. And It wasn't, okay, so Susie's going to go and get her degree, and then she's going to go get her master's, and then she's going to go get her doctorate. She's 17 years into school here with $600,000 worth of debt, living in her mom's basement.
Yeah.
And she's not even thinking about being a parent because she's still trying to figure out how to be a student.
Absolutely.
And her body is designed by the Creator with that clock that's going inside there saying, I need to create something in here, and you're not giving me the opportunity. I mean, man, the world is so upside down. We so desperately need what you guys are teaching to our kids to get them to come back to the model that God made for us in marriage. We got to get past the text dating and all this, whatever they do now, and build relationships and
whatever they do.
I don't even know how they do it, man. I'm telling you.
Well said. They don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah. I remember talking to Carla on the phone. I mean, so we lived about 30 minutes apart, and I would go down and we would go to dinner, and then I'd come back home, bring her back home, and I'd stay there for 30 or 45 minutes, however long, till it was time for me to go home and go to bed. And then I would go home, I'd brush my teeth, I'd pick up the phone that was connected to the line in the house, and we would talk to 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and talk ourselves to sleep, basically. And then the next day, I'd get up and go to work and call her, my first break. And we spoke words to each other all the time, and we saw each other very often. I just don't see people doing that anymore. And I wonder if that's kind of how we've gotten to the point of these 30-plus-year-old females still unmarried. I've got friends of mine I went to school with. We all graduated in 92. Some of the best women I know who I always thought would be the best moms ever. And they're just living at home, maybe with their parents, maybe in the house by themselves, no relationship whatsoever. And I'm so sad for them because, number one, I know they're awesome people. I knew these people for years. Some of them are really great friends. And then I see what they're missing, what Carla and I share together, not just our kids, but the relationship and how we carry each other's burdens, how we're one flesh. And it just breaks my heart on their behalf. And then I look at all these other children coming up behind all of us, and they're kind of setting themselves up for the same thing. It's just like failure on top of failure on top of failure.
Totally. And the scary thing for me is the church seems, at least from the things that I read, is trying to figure out how, we're now in this position where they're trying to figure out how to affirm all, singleness, which, of course, again, everybody knows Paul wishes that we were all, celibate and like him. Everybody knows that. But Paul himself, who said, I wish everybody was as I were, said, that ain't realistic, kids. So every man needs his own wife and every woman need her own husband because of sexual temptation. I mean, that's what he said. And so that said, my fear is in trying to make the 30-something, 40-something, 50-something-year-old singles feel good about themselves, we are doing nothing to stop the problem on the front end. We're doing nothing to cast a vision for what marriage is supposed to be, and so that we can keep that cycle from continuing to happen. And again, my heart, I know those single people that I'm like, I cannot believe you aren't married and thriving with a man that's loving you the way you deserve. The same thing with a guy that loves the Lord and yet doesn't see. I'm like, what is going on? But we're called to try to stop the tide up front early on. And I think we've got to, we have to change the understanding again of what the biblical purpose, significance of marriage is, or else we're not going to change it. Because even a lot of those 30-something, 40-something, 50-something-year-old singles are still holding out for a Hollywood romance,
right,
more than they're holding out for a biblical marriage, and they don't even realize it. And they really don't.
And that's really probably because their parents really didn't know how to talk to them about this. The church definitely did not know how to talk to them about this. So we're watching, what was her name, Kelly, whatever she is, and Tom Cruise in Top Gun, and this relationship that just, when we were kids thinking, or Space Camp. You remember Leah Thompson, the cute little chick in Space Camp?
And I think I missed Space Camp.
You didn't see Space Camp?
I don't think so. I remember
man.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I'm going to go back and watch it.
Yeah, Netflix that one. So Top Gun, what was it? What was Molly Ringwald, every movie she was in, she was always a little redheaded girl nobody liked until this guy came in and swept her off. And that was what we saw. Young and the Restless on television, all the soaps, Dallas, all these programs in the 80s and 90s on television, 90210, Melrose Place, all these things that none of it was biblical, but we watched it, and that was what we did and talked about and modeled our haircuts and our moves and our cars and everything.
And subconsciously modeled our expectations for what the relationship would look like when it happened. Yeah, it reminds me when I went, I office a lot from this coffee shop named Merides. There's it's in downtown Franklin, and sometimes I forget where I park my car. Long story short, one time I went out back. I couldn't find it. Went down the street, couldn't find it. When the parking garage, I finally remembered. I remember exactly where it is. It's at the top of the staircase, second floor, right there. And I went up the parking garage, second floor, and I didn't see it. But I know that that's where. How can it not be there? Cale, it was there, right in front of me, but it was the minivan instead of my Camry. So I had forgotten I'd driven the Sienna that day, and so I am staring right at my Sienna with the 3 dents that my daughter Claire, who remained nameless, put in it. Okay, she only put 2 of them, but I'm staring right at my own car, but I don't recognize it because I'm looking for the other car in my mind. And I'm telling you, Cale, there are singles that they wouldn't recognize the one if it was, I know God said it was right here on the second floor, right outside the stair, and they could be staring right at them and not recognize them because it's not what they're expecting to see.
That's powerful, dude. That goes back to being a little kid. Gosh, I wish the Lord would show me who I was going to marry. Thinking that you've got it already figured out. You want it, like you're saying, you don't want that to be the cute little blonde that sits on the third row in the classroom.
Yeah.
Okay, so look at my wife, Carla, and myself. Same situation. Two of the least likely people to ever connect and be married for 20 years. I mean, if people watch your videos, get to know you and Julie, the conversations you and I have had in the past, you two were the probably least likely two people in your class to get together. I mean, come on. It's so obvious, like you say, it's the one that is opposite of you is who you're really made to be with, because it takes those two opposites to complete.
Yeah, well, that's why. I mean, look at creation. It goes back to creation. God made all creation. It's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. It's not good. What? Stop the presses. It's not good for man to be alone. I need to make a helper suitable for him, and he made woman just the very gender, even though, of course, we're trying to erase all that today in our contemporary culture. A guy by the name of Joe Malone wrote a book. He's a friend of mine. It's called, in fact, you might want to have him on the show sometime for real. It's called Battle of the Sexes. And even though he's a believer, he's also was a researcher and a college professor. And so he, using an evolutionary, which I don't even believe in evolution, but an evolutionary scientific framework, shows how monogamy is the best way for our species to continue. In fact, it's the only reason our species has continued thus far. And he's like, I was just amazed at everything I kept learning about neurology, about the differences between male and female bodies, it kept confirming what God had in Scripture. You're like, well, who knew? Wow, what a surprise.
Wow, God told the truth.
Yeah, it's that way just in the basic differences between male and female, and then you put all the family and personality backgrounds, and it's just that it's amazing how we can complement instead of live in conflict when there's a little thing called humility. I'm too humble to even say the H. Humility. I believe in humility. So, but I mean, really, it takes that, dying to yourself daily.
Yeah.
But you don't see none of that in a movie or TV show about what makes relationships work.
No. Well, how do we, as whether we're listening and we're 18 like I used to be, or now we're 45 with 5 kids and 20 years under our belts, how do we most best address this? I know we need to start at home with it. Then how can we help our local church body address this?
We have tons of resources on our website, and you know tons. I mean, we have almost 170 Love Ed videos. Most of them arranged in playlists. I do that, number one, because you never know what YouTube will suggest you watch next after you watch one of our videos. So we put them in playlists. So I'm going to tell you what you're going to watch next. But number two is so that you can have a little concise package that you could watch a video together, separately, come together and have a discussion. You could do that at home. You could do that in your student ministry. And, I mean, we have playlists that deal with dating, hot topics handled with care, purpose-driven dating, dating 101. We do that with sex, from premarital sex in the scriptures, top 10 benefits of saving sex for marriage. And we do that with just relationships, relationology. And so you can, that's one thing. We also have it's a digital study guide series now, the Beyond Sex and Salvation curriculum. Unfortunately, we don't really have the relationology and purpose-driven dating curriculums in a packaged form like that yet. I mean, it really is just still Julie and me and a couple other board members that are, busy themselves. So we don't have, the resources aren't out there like we want yet, but they will be. Also figuring out how, whenever the pastor knows he's going to do a relationship talk or marriage talk, they can learn pointers from our website as far as how to present that in a way that young adults and college students can be included. My highest suggestion is to make it clear that's who you want there, that you want people that aren't in relationship there yet. I've even, when I've spoken at college campuses and done like a chapel talk that everybody's required to come to, but then I want them to come to an afternoon session or an evening session that they aren't. I put up a big picture of a cute little couple, and then I put a big circle and a slash through them. And I'm like, hey, what we're talking about tonight we're not talking to couples. We're trying to talk to people that want to be a couple, a healthy couple in the future. And you might not be surprised to know that couples still wind up coming to that afternoon session or that evening session because, all they did is they saw the cute couple. They didn't even see the circle with the slash through it. But the good part is the totally unattached person got a direct invitation from me saying, please come to this. I think this is something that eventually we are looking to recruit what we call real rock stars, couples who've been married 30 plus years that are in churches all across America. And they might already be doing their own little marriage ministry with pre-marriage couples or married couples or whatever like that. Or, they might be doing triage with people that want to divorce. Mm-hmm. We want to recruit couples like that to take kids through Relationology series right there in their own church, to take kids through a purpose-driven dating series. Again, right now we just really have the Beyond Sex and Salvation series that's up there for that. And that's really more of an older, college, young adult market than it is high school, but it's there. Right. And you can do that in your own living room with just like Julie and I, inviting all the single people we knew in the Franklin area, and I wound up with a living room full of single women. Well, okay, let's, go for it.
Right. How did that work out, by the way? What were the results now? That's been a couple of years ago.
Oh, that was 2003.
Wow,
We've been doing
more
this
than a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was a long time. And I'll tell you, it was so clear that was of the Lord. I think it was like the second class or third class, and we were asking for like we were talking about certain relational problems and stuff, like with being honest and stuff like that, and I had questions. I asked them, so when has dishonesty ruined a relationship? And I fully expected ahead of time, these women are going to be tearing into their exes. This is not going to be pretty, but whatever. Cale, those ladies were like, well, I was in this relationship with this guy, and I just couldn't be honest about this. I mean, they started, I mean, even though there's a guy in the room, I guess I'm a safe guy. I'm married with my wife sitting right next to me, and they opened up on a level that I knew they never would have with a bunch of single guys in the room. Right. And vice versa, when we did our first guys group, it was they could be so caustic, like and so in your face. So one guy says his opinion about one question, the other guy says, well, that's stupid, I think it's this way, and we realize, this really wouldn't work. So we do encourage the Beyond Sex and Salvation groups to be one gender, just because they really are a deeper level of self-revelation, right, of, really, growing again, because part of our dealio is what happens with marriage is for a lot of people, it's their first foray into a truly, into an attempt at relational intimacy. Mm. And because of that, that's what makes it not work. Yeah. And so, our Beyond Sex and Salvation groups, which they weren't called that back then, but they are an attempt to learn to grow in that relational intimacy ahead of time. Even our purpose-driven dating and relationality classes that we've been doing out of our home that aren't always same gender, even there, they're learning how to share who they really are in a way that's appropriate and yet, good for the soul. So
this is like an outlet for people who are single, and they're caught up in the socials of today, which everybody knows is fake, but everybody still lives in there. But this gives them a way to come out, be transparent, be real, and to express themselves in preparation for, bad breath in the morning when your spouse rolls over on your side.
Yeah. And again, that the people use that all the time in premarital stuff, and I'm like, the bad breath is not going to be the issue.
That's not the big one. Yeah.
It's the fact that nobody really knew you your whole life, and now here's this person that you're married to, and well, theoretically, you got the rest of your life, so you gotta, and even if you want to try to hide stuff, it comes out. That was true with my mom. The 14th of this month will mark 20 years since her death at her own hand by suicide. And my dad found out about my mom's sexual molestation within 1 month of her death.
Wow.
So I sometimes tell that to the students in our high school students in our class, because the classes we have in our home are just high school students, not middle school students. And I tell them, I know you think you got these hurts, and I know you think you've done a great job of moving on without dealing with it. I get it. My mom did too. She wound up getting a great college life, great college degree, great husband, namely my dad. But years later, in her 40s, it finally caught up with her, the fact that you just can't go on not dealing with this. And you certainly can't go on without your husband knowing the greatest hurts of your heart, especially when they have to do with sexuality, which is the thing that y'all are supposed to share with each other and no one else.
Right.
So if you're listening right now and that's you, there's something, there's a hurt, maybe it was done to you like my mom. Maybe it's something you did that you don't want anyone to know. Maybe it's something you're doing. Porn, child porn, whatever. You got to know you cannot bury that forever. It will not work. The only way that we deal with sin is to confess it. That is the only way we effectively kill the shame that sin brings. And that has to do whether it was you that committed the sin, or like in my mom's case, of course she was innocent, this little girl being molested. But it is still in confessing, this is what happened to me, that other people could come in and be like, of course that wasn't your fault, and that's terrible, and we're going to help you heal. Don't hold on to that, thinking, well, worked pretty good burying it so far. That stuff, that hurt is like nuclear waste. And yep, it doesn't kill the grass and the trees right away, but you just give it some time, and it will. And not only the trees and the grass, but all the animals that feed on it. So,
well, that's where a lot of people find themselves. And a lot. Going back to the porn thing, a few weeks ago, Carla and I did a marriage conference here in town, and we were very just flat out transparent and honest about it. And we felt like, of course, if you recognize that is a problem, 7 out of 10 men in the church face this issue. So that means that about 14 of the 21 men in my marriage conference had a problem, at least at some level.
And all of them are looking away from you.
Yeah, they're looking at the ground. But the reality is that it's the shame that you tie up yourself in with that particular thing, and others as well. You've been there. Yeah. And it is the shame, and that's where the devil keeps us bound. And it's like, well, if she finds out, she's going to kill you. Yeah, but she may actually want to help you. And so whatever that binding pain is, learning to be able to be in a relationship with someone and trust them enough to be able to share whatever the hang-up is. I think you guys are giving kids and young people a great head start on that when they can interact with your ministry.
Yeah.
So do you guys travel outside of Franklin?
Absolutely. We haven't recently. We've been largely off the road for a long little stint, but 2007 to 12, we did a lot of traveling, and I don't necessarily love the traveling, but I love connecting and sharing with people these truths in ways hopefully that they hadn't really thought about before. I dig it. So yeah, so if you're listening, you're like, we want them at our church. We'd like to be at your church too, or college, group. Again, we've spoken to a lot of, I guess, what is it? Charleston Southern University is probably the closest that we've been to y'all, I think.
Yeah.
How far away is that?
That's about 3 hours. I spent one semester there back in the day.
Yeah, that was a great time. That was a great time there.
So let me ask you real quick, because I've not kept up, and I apologize, but you and I, we got to know each other probably around 2005, because I was in radio and you were working the other side of radio.
Yeah, the dark side.
Yes, you were. You were the weekly call. One of the 2 weekly calls I looked forward to every week. By the way, the others I did not even answer most of the time. But anyway,
thank you. God bless you.
Yes, you had 2 or 3 kids, and then you guys adopted two brothers, I think. So, are you a family of 4 or 5? I can't remember.
We're a family of 5, so we had 3 homegrown, 2 adopted.
Okay, I couldn't remember, but I remember all of that, and it's an amazing story. Maybe one day when Carla and I do our Adoption Stories podcast, we'll have you and Julie come on. But I remember that. But one of the things I remember the most was just how much fun it was to talk to Michael, and how cool it has been since that time to see and watch this thing in the peripheral grow and be able to encourage young people and know that you guys are making a difference. And it's my favorite thing. Okay, so go back to Kel and Carla's marriage counseling. We're sitting there. It's a denominational Pentecostal church. We're sitting there in the office of the pastor, and he's still got his coat and tie on, and we're in the leather love seat with the button things in it, in the office, and it's very stern and it's very serious. And, I mean, and then I watch the Love Ed videos, and it's so much fun, and it looks so much more like mine and Carla's life. It's goofy, it's what it is, it's real, and it just makes you appreciate. It doesn't have to be stern and finger pointing and damnation and threats. Marriage is fun if you're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And you guys are just great examples of that. And just, guys, there'll be links all in the show notes to everything that we can get from Michael and Julie to share with you guys. But it's some good stuff. I love what you guys are doing. I love M. Hay. He's my favorite.
Hello. Hola, this is M. Hay, Dean of Dating of Future Marriage University.
I love that part. He says he's an alien, and he's so white, he looks like a stormtrooper. I mean, my gosh, man.
Yes. Yes, you like that way.
I watch that with my kids, and I some of that I don't let them listen to because I got some really young ones, But other ones, they'll say, Daddy, what's wrong? I'm like, I've seen this 70 times, and I've got to watch it one more time. It's just too good, Take things into your own hands, man. I love it. I mean, oh, my gosh, I could probably about quote it. But I'll link this stuff in the show notes. I want to encourage you guys to go back and maybe listen to this again. Maybe you've got a singles minister or a youth pastor at church. I don't think they'll be offended if you're bringing them something that can help them make their ministry with their students better. And Michael and Julie do a great job. And if you're on Twitter and you're following Modern Christian Men, I want to encourage you to follow FM University. They're usually the ones that I'm mocking about not coming on the program. And I won't be able to do that anymore.
Yes, that is taken away from you.
But, boy, I got you with David Tripp. That was a good one. And, so I finally... I
called me out.
Yeah, and as we close, the funny thing about having Michael on the program is it was my intention to have him as my very first episode. And I'm just now 3 seasons, 35 plus shows, gotten them on here. So, bro, I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I have missed talking to you. We need to figure out a way to have an excuse to talk more often, because that was some of the best time of my life. The radio gig, the time catching up and talking music and family and adoption and love and trying to figure all this stuff out. And man, we really appreciate you being here, dude.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
It's a blast.
Absolutely. Okay. We'll find them online. Show notes. FM University on Twitter. Where else can we find you on social?
Everything is FM University. Okay. That's YouTube, that's Facebook, that's Twitter, that's Instagram. FM University, that's also the website, fmuniversity.net, not .com. So, yeah.
Cool. We'll link it all, and we appreciate you being here, and we'll need to do it again.
All right. Thanks a lot, Cale.
Appreciate you, brother. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, thanks again for listening. Thank you, Michael Johnson. You're awesome. It only took you 36 months to say yes. Thank goodness Julie didn't wait that long. Anyway, hey, I'll be back next time. I got a lot of great stuff in the pipe, so tune back in. And remember, if you get a chance, we give it a review to the program. It kind of helps get the word out there, and share it with someone, which is even more important, most especially your youth or singles minister at church. God bless you guys. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Modern Christian Men podcast. You can find us online at modernchristianmen.com.
Good morning, Michael Johnson.
Hey, I hear your voice.
Hang on, I'll turn my camera on.
Oh, are we doing cameraless?
We can. I normally do. Do you want to see me? I have all my clothes on.
I can't believe we were going to do it cameraless. I had to figure out how to set my thing up so that there was nothing. Hey!
There, let me see. Is that better?
Yeah. How are you?
I need some, hang on, I need my hat. I don't have my hat. Sorry about the reflection there.
I need to see this because I'm like, do I need to be into my microphone like this?
Maybe. I can hear you really good.
Okay, good. So,
whoa, there's me. Why am I don't want to see me.
So we should go to I'll remember this next time. If there is a next time. If you're like, we're never doing this again, ever.
Excuse me.
All the time I was trying to do you a favor, but you wouldn't listen.
No, I kept saying, Michael, we need you on the show.
Okay, so how do we go to not video mode?
Do you see 3 buttons with a microphone, a camera, and a red hang-up button on your screen?
I do.
Okay,
I do.
If you click the one in the middle, that's the camera.
All right.
Mine goes away.
All right. Boom. All right.
Now I can cover mine back up with my little piece of tape so Mark Zuckerberg can't watch me.
Mark. Is that really what you do?
I have a piece of tape. You can't see it now, but if I go... Okay, stay right there. I turn the camera on. You see that yellow?
Yeah.
That's yellow tape. Tape.
Wow. You're... Seriously? That's really a thing?
Yeah.
You're... Like, my little light comes on when the camera comes on, so it's not like I could be surprised. I don't think. Could I be?
I don't know. I never use a camera. I have a face made for radio.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Now I know that. That's
your audio sounds really good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Excellent. I'm excited. I'm excited to have you here.
Yeah. Well, I apologize for being such a curmudgeon about technology, but here it's actually happening.
Well, the funny thing about Skype is it's really just voice over IP. So, like when you go somewhere like a multi-location church,
mm-hmm.
and they've got a phone there that the pastor can pick up and call one of his pastors at another place,
mm-hmm.
another campus. They're doing that all over the internet, and basically they've paid somebody to sell them their own version of Skype that plugs into telephones.
Okay.
So yeah.